Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.
Board of Directors meeting. It's Wednesday, April 27th at 5:30 p.m. Our agenda reads as follows. Item 1 is public comments. Item 2 is finance and operations related, which includes the treasurer's report and the food service contract policies. Number 3, consent agenda, including minutes, warrants, resignations and nominations. I don't think we have any retirements that I saw or leaves. The superintendent's report, including grants, overview, a technology update, and the Arlington Sandgate update, chair's report, other items, and there's an informational packet there for student enrollment and budget status report. Following that, there are 2 executive sessions under 1 VSA 313.93.
Yeah.
Hello?
There are 2 retirements listed on the consent agenda.
Thank you. If the agenda is acceptable to everybody, we'll continue. Any changes? All right, public comments. Are there members of the public who want to contribute to this meeting? If so, please state your name for the record so that Richard can get that into the minutes.
My name is Stacy Phillips, and
Go ahead, Stacy. I can't hear you though.
Oh,
Yes, we can.
Now we can.
okay, you can. I got closer to the speaker. Sorry. So, members of the board, my name is Stacy Phillips, and I live at 4 Frost Drive. I'm speaking tonight to make you aware of concerns that I have for the 2nd grade classroom at Monument Elementary. Their teacher's been out for the last 6 weeks, and I've recently come to believe that there's been a significant decrease in instruction in his absence. My concerns are as follows. We have not seen any work coming home from school. And my son reports that they're watching Bill Nye Science videos for science. They're no longer using their math workbooks, and they're only doing color by numbers. He said that reading hasn't been on their schedule, and he told me that they pretty much only use their pencils during math, which leads me to believe they're not doing much writing during school. So I'd just like to ask you to please look into this and assist me with ensuring that my son and all of the 2nd graders in his class are receiving the education and support that they should be. 6 weeks have already gone by since the teacher left the classroom, and it's really close to the end of the school year. So I'm hoping that we can have a quick resolution for this. Thank you.
I would ask you, have you taken this to the elementary board? Because this is an elementary school. We really don't have direct supervision of those folks
I
at
will
the SVSU level.
I will be honest, I did not realize that there was a separate board until I got here tonight. So I will take it to them as well. I just wanted it to be kind of public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public comments?
If you do, you can turn your camera on and physically raise your hand so we can see you, or you can use in the reaction button at the bottom to raise the animated hand if you have a comment.
I'm not seeing further, so we'll move on to finance and operations related. We have a treasurer's report from March 31st, 2022. Is there a motion to accept that report?
So moved. Second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the treasurer's report for March 22, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Treasurer's report is accepted. We have item B to award the food service management contract. Renee has provided us some information here. She would like us to look at two motions. The first one would be to award the food service management contract to the Abbey Group beginning July 1st, 2022 for a 1-year period. The contract will continue to cover all school food service operations except Fisher Elementary and Arlington Memorial High School. And the second motion would be to extend the current food service management contract with Fresh Picks Cafe for Fisher Elementary and Arlington Memorial High School for 1 year. Do we have a motion on the first to award to the Abbey Group for a period of 1 year?
I'll make that.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. The Abbey Group contract is extended for a period of 1 year. Motion number 2 to extend the contract for Fisher Elementary and Arlington Memorial High School. Is there a motion?
Second it.
We have a motion from Todd, second Leon. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And the motion carries. And Fresh Picks is 1 more year extended contract. Item 3 is policies. We have policy 5090, interrogation or searches of students by law enforcement or other agencies. We're asked to warn this policy. As it has been changed, hopefully everybody got a chance to see this in the packet. And our legal experts have taken a look at this to vet the policy. So is there a motion to warn 5090?
So move.
Second. Motion by Leon, second Todd. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor of warning 5090 interrogation or searches, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No abstentions? Motion carries. 5090 is warned. The consent agenda, which includes minutes, warrants, retirements, resignations and nominations. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Todd, second by Matt. Discussion.
I just have one question, somewhat pertaining to it. I see that on one of the now forms, Rachel Boisberg, new position. Which is person, I hardly support it. Is there a plan to just cover the duties that she did at Fisher, or is that part of her duties? Or with Arlington School District?
Kate, would you like to address that since you're here? Thank you.
Sure, and some of it was garbled, but Rachel Boisford is we're looking to have her fill the associate director position for the Arlington students. So currently she covers Fisher and the high school. And so the goal would be that she would do the same next year. And then we would backfill what she's doing right now with a special education teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Sure.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Carries. The consent agenda is approved. Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to give you an update of the transition of technology, particularly with what Sousa IT has been doing for us tonight. So I asked Adam Sousa and Mark Gavin from Sousa IT to come and give a presentation tonight. And they asked Chip Watson and Elaine. Wow.
Yes.
Wow, I don't know how I got that one, Elaine, sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna say it's the effects of long COVID, how's that? So, and Adam wanted them to be here too, to be part of the presentation. I personally am excited with what some of the changes. I think our principals and administrators are too, and I want to share that with the board. And as I said to Adam earlier today, I look forward to further adjustments on how Sousa IT integrates with us here. And when they first made this proposal to us, their view was really from outside of our organization. And no one outside really sees everything that's going on. But now that you're here, as we go forward, I see great promise. So with that, I'll turn it over to Adam.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim, and thank you guys. So I broke this out into 3 kind of main categories. My goal.
Do you want to share a screen or what?
I got bullet points.
So
if
if you
want that.
join the meeting, then I can make you a co-host.
All right, on the fly, let's go.
Yeah.
Glad this is over my head. That explanation will only last about 15 minutes.
All right.
Okay. You're quicker than most getting in there, but I would expect that.
Oh, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Given the title, his title.
We couldn't figure that out. We'd have other conversations
Yeah.
to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. And
So you passed their first test. First test passed.
What's your Apple ID? If you don't glaze over, then you're good.
Well, if this doesn't work out, I am hiring for support analysts.
Right, I just wanna make sure.
And it's warm here.
All right, so like I said, I just have some bullet points here. So I really broke this out into 3 categories for you guys. And the goal of this isn't to give you like the nitty gritty of everything that we've been doing, because there's a lot of projects going on that the team as a whole has been working on, like the Arlington, working with them to get their systems integrated with the school district, the central office move, and the building level stuff that goes on. My goal is to give you an idea of the direction of where the tech department's headed as a team. So you understand like the changes that we're making, that you're going to be seeing down the road in the budget, as we're changing the way accounts and those types of things work, to give you that vision of where we're headed. So as changes are happening, you understand the vision and why these changes are happening at the school. I always like to start with the goal of the tech department is to always keep students and teachers in mind. So our job is to make sure that you guys have technology in the buildings, in the classrooms that support teaching and learning in a cost-effective way. Because one thing that I keep repeating is every dollar that's overspent on tech is $1 that's taken away from the classroom. So our job is to make sure that the district gets the reliability that they expect, the security that they expect, so they're not experiencing downtime, but also doing it in a cost-effective way that's not we're not wasting money on tech. So that way we're being as cost-effective and not taking money that could be in the classroom. So the 3 categories that I have is just the teacher / student / end user facing changes, budget changes, and then some security improvements that are coming. So I think the most important part, and the part that a lot of people always care about, is, well, what is this doing for teachers and what is this doing for students? So one thing that we're going to be wrapping up this summer is completing the migration to Google Workspace. So currently the school is kind of split between two different worlds per se. They're split between a Microsoft world and a Google world. As these companies, and it accelerated during COVID, rolling out more and more integrations within their own platform. So right now it's a little clunky for teachers and students in the classroom using things like Google Classroom, the Google Chromebooks, which was a pretty significant investment that you guys made a year or two ago. So our goal is to kind of wrap it all up, get you primarily into one world. It's not saying that we're not going to have Microsoft products. There'll always be Microsoft products, Adobe products, but we're moving you guys all into one world. And then these apps will just live as kind of like a connector to that primary Google world. And what this means, like when you're talking to teachers, the key thing that comes to them is this means that we're eliminating that second email address. So right now, teachers and everybody in the district has two email addresses. We're bringing them down to one and one world. So it's going to make their life a lot easier. Like I said, Microsoft's not going away. It's still going to be there, but everything's going to be in the Google world per se, which will help us utilize the investment that was made into Chromebooks a lot more effectively. And as the need for tech support grows, we're continuing to add just different ways that people can reach out for support. So the ability to email the tech department, that's in place. So that's very helpful. So they don't have to go and fill out a 10 or 15 question form. They can just send an email to help@svsu.org. Same thing for you guys. It goes into a central pool that all the techs have access to. We have metrics on that stuff. So if something's lingering, it can trigger alarms. So then someone else can grab it to really make sure that the tech department is offering the level of support that the students and teachers both deserve. We added the ability to call, text. That's helpful again if someone can't get into their email. Starting to push this idea of you really can reach out to the tech department. So we want to be as accessible as possible. We don't want it to be difficult for people to reach out to us, because that's how we can stop security incidents. The quicker they can access us, the quicker we can help mitigate any impact from something like that. And I'm going to skip to the security part. So some of the security things that we're going to be implementing, and I don't want to go too far into it because security can be a huge conversation, but we are aiming to implement what would be considered industry standards. And these are things that Department of Defense sets. These are things that are set by other industry experts. It's not the SVSU tech department coming out and saying, hey, we want to do this because we think it would be secure. We're following guidelines that are issued by government bodies and by larger companies that are doing research on this stuff, like Cisco, Microsoft, Google. And our goal is to implement those. So tying it back to the budget side, when we fill out those insurance forms every year, we get to check more boxes, which means that you save money on your general liability. I don't know what that's going to play out for SVSU, but in other schools, I've seen that be up to 2%. It really depends on the insurance company and what their process is. This year has been the most aggressive year I've seen with the insurance companies, really making sure and actually auditing schools. So you can't just check the box anymore. You actually have to either hire a third party to audit everything, or the insurance company will just come by and audit you. So our goal is to implement those industry security standards so we can check those boxes and help save money, but also help reduce the possibility of unplanned downtime due to someone's account getting hacked or whatever. We're going to be implementing a hardware replacement schedule, which means that hard endpoints, so like laptops, desktops, student devices, versus pushing them to see how far we can make that hardware last. We're putting a replacement cycle in place. And what this is going to do is make it so we're not running 15-year-old hardware trying to make rushing when new security updates come and realizing, oh, that hardware is not compatible. So that's really the goal there. So we're putting something in place that makes sense. We're not going to go overboard and replace laptops every 2 years. Usually it's every 5 years for workstations that someone's using every day. So we're implementing that hardware replacement cycle, which is part of security. Because if we're not staying on top of it, the stuff's getting old and we can't update it. Budget changes. We are moving away from ad hoc purchasing. So kind of the way, and this is just how it's not unique to SVSU. It's just how schools have evolved with buying technology. Each building kind of acts on their own in a way. And what we're trying to do is move towards fleet level purchasing. So what that means is instead of buying 20 laptops for this elementary school, 30 laptops for the high school, there's going to be a plan that we're replacing all laptops or 50% of the laptops this year, 50% next year. And that does two things. It drives cost savings. We can negotiate better pricing, start leveraging vendors against each other, because when those orders get bigger, they want to win those orders. And then it also helps, again, linking everything back to how does this help teachers and students, because that's the goal of everything that we're trying to do for the school, is it becomes more predictable for teachers. So teachers know, same thing with principals, they know when the classroom technology will be upgraded. Therefore, maybe that's when we choose to implement a new digital curriculum, or that's when the teacher knows that they're going to maybe ramp up their tech skills and try to take more risk in the classroom. So that's one of the changes that we're making, and that's going to be very difficult. It's hard to make that transition because we're used to being like firefighters, putting out these little fires everywhere and patching it. But making that shift means that we're gonna have to let some of those fires kind of go per se until we can get everything into that fleet level. The good thing is that I think that it's not going to be that bad. But that is one of the transitions that we're making, I guess, in like the direction of how tech budgeting is working. The other one is that we did apply for just shy of $400,000 in E-rate funding to support upgrading the entire network. This is a first time for the district that these funds are being utilized. So what this is again going to allow us to do is move away from that ad hoc purchasing, which before like they would do portions of the network as wherever the biggest need was. And now we're able to do all of it at once and bring a $400,000 savings to the district by using those E-rate funds. And that's going to be a huge improvement.
Okay. But we did have E-rate for something, right?
Yes. So there's two categories of E-rate. So there's category 1, which discounts your internet service. And then there's category 2, which is kind of like a grant application. You have to go through a process and they'll say, yes, we'll fund this. No, we won't. And there's a lot of back and forth, which Anne from the tech team is the one who handles all that. She's done a great job. But this is the first time for the district to use category 2.
They said you applied for it. Has it been approved?
They've come back and forth on questions, which means I've seen of all the E-rate apps we've done, I'd say about half of them have come back already. SVSU has not come back yet. I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit later because we brought Arlington into it. But it's almost guaranteed because the federal government says we're giving you up to it's like $170 a student. And then it's just now making sure that everything we're asking for is covered within the program. And then we have 2 years to implement the project. and that project's going to help fix some existing issues in the classrooms with slowdowns when all the Chromebooks open up. And then also we've included adding outdoor Wi-Fi to help with learning spaces as they grow and develop over the next 5 years with these electronic devices. So those are my 3 categories. I'm open to questions.
Well, thank you for clarifying, because when I heard you say we hadn't applied for E-rate, I knew we were getting E-rate funding, but it was for the internet. Okay.
Yes.
What's the biggest challenge you're running into, your mechanical or electronic, hardware, software?
I'd say the biggest challenge is that ad hoc versus fleet level purchasing. And then also it's because you're not just dealing with hardware, you're dealing with people. Right. And it's helping to explain like, hey, look, like I understand this fire is going on right now in your classroom, but we need to wait another 4 months because in 4 months we have it budgeted to replace everything. So I'd say that that's probably the biggest challenge right now. And it is it's a tough thing to navigate because it's not just a change in the budget, it's being able to communicate that to people in a way that they understand. And the good thing is once you communicate it and they understand where they're going to be, you typically get buy-in and people are okay, and they'll help contain that fire until we have the solution in place. But I'd say that that's probably the biggest challenge right now, because like we know that there's the Wi-Fi issues. We want to do the phone system upgrade. Like there's a lot of these things that are going on, but we need to make that shift to fleet level purchasing to be able to deliver on some of those promises.
When you talk about fires though in the classroom, these aren't fires that are impacting educational instruction, correct? Or are they? I mean, you're not going to go back to a teacher and say,
No.
I'm sorry, you can't have.
No.
Okay.
No, and there are things that are, and the teachers may not view them necessarily as like a big problem. We see them as ticking time bombs per se. So it's like trying to navigate, like opening up the Chromebooks and having the classroom be slow, right? Like that's something that's impacted, right?
Right.
But
Because there's too many people on that particular hub at one
Yep.
time.
Yeah.
and that's something that we've had to ride out this year. They can still teach, they can still use the devices,
Okay.
but there's probably a little bit of hesitancy, right? If a teacher experiences that for the first 5 minutes, class is slow. We want to be delivering service where they just know that it's going to work.
Right. No, understood. But if you've got feedback from your customers essentially saying, I can't conduct what I need to do in my classroom, we're not putting them off saying you have to wait 4
No.
months. Okay.
No, and you guys, and that's why I've been in other situations where it's like we have to go back to administration and say, look, like you've drastically underfunded tech. Moving this ad hoc is going to be moving to this fleet level purchasing is going to be very difficult. You guys really aren't in that situation. You have a pretty good, like from the funding mechanism, it's going to work, and then the current inventory and stuff like that. So
When my company did the same thing and they got us all laptops.
Yep.
And they took the old ones away and they took them back to the ID department. They wiped them all clean and they offered them back to families at I think they were $25 to each family just to cover the cost of the tech department wiping them clean. What are your plans for the laptops that you take back? Because they're not all garbage.
So I can give you my standard answer.
Yeah.
But this hasn't been discussed in administration. My standard answer is I stay because it is taxpayer funded. I tend to stay away from that because what I have seen happen is, oh, I can buy them back. Let's put certain people on a replacement cycle. So I tend to stay away from it. There is a company that comes and there's like a purchasing process, like a bid process that can happen where they can buy the old technology. I think that's a safer route, especially since we're in a position where we're providing every kid with a device and every faculty.
But I'm just saying they're not going to go in the
Yep.
garbage. They'll go
No.
somewhere. There's some.
Yep.
I do have to say, one of the things that I've heard is anticipation of only have to deal with one email, the dreaded Google Apps account and bouncing, a couple of different passwords, or like somebody will say to me, well, I sent you an email, and I go, well, I didn't check my apps account, because that's really, I only use that for like, sharing documents as opposed to real work. So I'm looking forward.
Matt has his
Matt?
hand up.
Matt?
And Leon does too.
So I had just a couple questions in line, in bullet item 2 under your first action item, the ability to call with, and you have with support metrics. Are we going to be provided a regular report monthly on your support metrics? And what metrics exactly are you measuring? Is that going to be total ticket time, ticket volume, resolution rate, average handle time?
Yeah, so the platform we use is Zendesk, which is they have a pretty big market share of providing like call center support software for companies. So the metrics are going to be, I think, everything that you would expect. So it is going to be like median wait time, average resolution time, how many tickets are reopened, volume by hour, volume by day, volume by time of year. We really can drill down. As far as reporting,
I'll answer that. I don't anticipate that we would be giving a monthly report to the board on performance of tech response time. That's something we may periodically do, like we're doing this update tonight, but it's more of I think an administrative function, and for administration to respond to if we're made aware of that there are issues.
It is, but I also think that it's important for us to see those metrics to estimate, to calculate the value that the tech consultant is providing us, right? And my second question to that is, when this was negotiated, were service level agreements negotiated on that? And if so, what are those expectations and what are the penalties for not meeting them?
yeah, so I don't know. So that's a tricky one, because like this is a hybrid department. So I mean, we work with the SVSU employees who are delivering the service. So that's something that, as we, again, like Jim said in the beginning, we came in without knowing the department. But as a whole, the department owns those metrics. So we're like the director. So we would be held, I think, to the same expectations of a director of IT. So that's, and I think we can work those out, like what those details are, but that's like ensuring that your E-rate funding is being utilized 100%, making sure that we're applying to grants, making sure that appropriate security measures are in place.
We're in discussions now about what that proposal for year 2 would look like, and that could include some of that as we design what the agreement would look like for year 2, which then will be presented at a subsequent board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can touch on that report section real quick, this is like what I would call like a transparency report that we try to generate on an annual basis. And it has those help desk metrics, which you could click. This is a very high level one page. You would be able to click on these and actually get a deeper dive on it. Assets, how many new assets have come into the district over that fiscal year? What's the total number of managed assets? And then how many assets were retired? So you would be able to click on this and get a spreadsheet of what are those assets. Budgeting in order, how much of the budget did we utilize? Are we staying within budget? Are we over budgeting, under budgeting? The total number of orders, total tech spend, and then projects. So how many planned projects happened in that fiscal year? How many unplanned projects happened? And then what was the total cost of those unplanned projects? These are like the metrics that we try to report on an annual basis. We didn't come in here. We don't have a full year here. So it'd be difficult to report on this, but we can start reporting on some of this stuff, like those metrics are getting generated through the support platform. I don't know if that I hope that answered the question.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Leon, did you have a question?
I did, but I think Matt probably got it to come out ahead of time. That's me. But I just wanted, and I guess along that line, what about making sure, do we have enough in-house staffing to help manage all of these things? I mean, I saw the percentages and so forth along that line. As we talk about being much more efficient with students to get them to learn more new stuff and have the technology available ready for them and solving the problems. Are we staffed enough? You had that conversation. That could be.
We've had that conversation frequently. So with every change that there is, so I think that is monitored, and what again, what I said when we first proposed this, my intent is not to eliminate jobs, but maybe use people differently, and to get input from Adam and Mark on, and he's, I'll say it here in front of both of you. Adam and Mark can't praise Elaine, even though I forgot her last name, and Chip enough to me about how crucial they have been in this integration. And that, you've been with us a long time, and I just want to, thank you publicly for, what you've done, and what, Adam has said to me about what he recognizes for the outstanding talents that you both are. So I think we have adequate numbers, but we're always, that's why we hire experts to advise us on whether they think differently, and then to advise us. And then as you did hear Adam say, he thinks that from a budget point of view, we're adequately funded. It's just how we use that, and whether that'll be personnel or equipment upgrades. It's I'm satisfied that we monitor it, and I'm not aware that there is any staffing needs right now. But that doesn't mean that Adam doesn't come to me next month and say something differently.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that they were all happy and in the job.
I didn't say they were all happy. I said.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none.
As I said, before the end of this year, we will have on the agenda for another meeting what the proposal will look like for next year, so the board can take action.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much.
Elaine.
My pleasure.
And again, thank you, Chip. Thank you, Elaine.
Oh, wow.
How come I'm not on the screen? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No.
Thank you, guys.
See you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Yes.
Next part of my report is a grants overview, and we have a bunch of people are going to be part of this presentation. Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau is here, Melissa Senecal is here, and Kate Abbott is all going to take part of that. So I gave you the screen. Yep. Go
Team's
ahead.
here. Okay, so if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to share. Well, before I share my screen, yes, okay. I'm going to share my screen. I have to talk through sharing my screen. Make sure I do it quickly.
But this is particularly about, our ESSER funds and all other title grants that are here before us, and to let you know how we're spending these and to what level and what balances look like, because we want to be assured that we are spending down these grants. But I will say that you will find some balances, because grants are allowed to roll over, and as they're in year to year could be increased cost to staffing levels because of raises and things like that. So we never want to completely zero out an account in any 1 year. Is that a good introduction for you?
That's great.
Okay,
Great.
there you go.
There you go. Okay, so we wanted to start by letting you know there's actually a grant team in our district. There's a group of us. So we've highlighted, it's a combination of myself, Dr. Kate Abbott, our interim director of student support services, Melissa Senecal, director of curriculum instruction and assessment, Lisa Poplawski, who's the administrative assistant, to the assistant superintendent and curriculum, Abby Ferrara, who's our assistant superintendent, assistant to recovery, Sheila Prince, who supports the student support services, Renee Gordon, director of finance and operations, and Mary Buick, accounting manager. And we meet every Monday at 11:30. We have a standing meeting, and we run through our goal as a team is to monitor the system and to collaborate. So we're gonna, Melissa Senecal is my partner with the title grant on the program side. And then Renee Gordon and Mary Buick are our backup on the finance side, because the state wants us to balance program and finance. So title, I always called it title, but it's, as Renee likes, let's use the state's language, the consolidated federal programs. Within that, there are 3 titles. Title I is funded, and it's meant to support educationally at-risk students beyond the regular classroom. All of our schools in the SDSU are school-wide, which means that they've met the threshold for community low income status. That's something that we have to submit for every single year. So those are the forms that kids that go home and first day packets, and we work really hard to get all our families to fill them out. It's such an important piece of data for our district. So our Title I funding is based on that. We also receive Title II, and Title II supports our educational staff in professional learning. And Title IV is this, I call it this funky pocket of money that had many stakeholders that came together. It's all about supporting a well-rounded education, improving school conditions for student learning, and promoting the effective use of technology. So you can kind of see from those 3 areas, it's all over, which is great. We like that. So I'm now going to show you this for this past year. Let's see if I can get it all on one slide. So right now in this moment, the state is finalizing our allocation for this next grant cycle, which this is grant season right now. So last year, you can see what our current awards were. This includes rollover. So what will happen, hopefully, this is what Renee and I've heard, they're going to populate the SDSU's system, and we're going to get our initial allocation, and then we will write investments. So what you're seeing is both our initial with the rollover amount. I will also add that COVID, the state has created a great deal of leniency because of COVID and the pandemic, because some of the investments that we normally write, we haven't been able to write because of the pandemic, because they required in-person something. So the state's been forgiving to districts around letting us carry money over, knowing that the goal is that we'll be able to use it for other things. But I'm actually really proud with our numbers. Title I in particular is, we're always looking to spend the Title I money, and we only have around close to $12,000 left. And I know that every investment always isn't fully used, but it's nice to know that we are spending down. I'm going to just add that Title I, I want to give you some examples. For Title I, that's where you see a lot of our interventionists. So I think in all of our schools, we have interventionists, and their goal, teachers provide good first instruction, interventionists provide and more. Every student that is accessible to this intervention gets good first instruction and more. And it's the and more that hopefully will help them catch up. Title I is also where we get money to provide tutoring services. That parent engagement is a requirement of Title I. It's a heavy requirement. The superintendent signs an assurance to say that we're doing parent engagement and we're using our title money to support it. Homelessness, I'm the homeless liaison for the district as well, and we receive funding to support homelessness through this title. And then early education also has a piece. Now my friend Melissa is going to share a little bit about Title II.
Absolutely. I just want to give one shout out. You mentioned the tutoring services, our partnership with the Tutorial Center and Sean Marie and her team we really appreciate that with our title. In addition, these services, these funds are being used for pre-K through 12th graders for students, staff, and families. Our Title II grants, some examples of those would be a lot of ongoing embedded professional learning. Examples of that would be our reading and math coaches and data literacy. Our Title IV examples that we have for you there would be our district equity coordinator, building level director of equity and school climate. We have a district level social, emotional, and behavioral coach. We also provide art and music personalization. And again, we mentioned parent engagement. And so important during these times of COVID, contracted services for trauma-related counseling services. So those are just some of the examples of how those funds are being used.
So every grant we receive has different rules. And so titles rules, we know that it runs it runs a fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. And so once we receive our initial allocation, that's when we start prepping and this whole process starts. One thing that's a big piece of title is called equitable shares. That means that the state gives us a list of independent and private schools in our attendance zone. And we're required to reach out to them to say if they would like to access title money. And they have a period of time to respond to us. And then we set up appointments with them. And tomorrow is appointment day. So a team of us will be, all day, we will be meeting with all the independent and private schools that have asked to access this money. And then Renee and I will do some magic to figure out, based on how many continue to want to collaborate with us, they will receive. We meet with every school. We sit with principals. We look at what their investments were last year. We look at the investments that they're interested for this year. And again, based on poverty rate for each school, because they're all school-wide, that'll determine how much money is available. We have a feedback form on our website for title, so community can be involved and give us feedback. We hold community partner meetings. This year we've met with the Bennington Workforce and Education Committee. We've collaborated with the Bennington Tutorial Center. I met yesterday with a representative from CCV who had some great ideas for Title IV to benefit Arlington Memorial High School and Mount Anthony. Wanted to put it on the table. Please come in and sit with me. Let's talk. And so then we follow up. So it's cool because we're doing a lot of collaboration to figure out how to best allocate the money. And I'm going to turn this part over to Melissa.
So our title grant investments are based on, first we started with a needs assessment, then that gets built into district and school continuous improvement plans. Those have to be then state approved. And from there, we can start tying those funding into bolstering those plans. How do we make those plans successful? So we have SVSU title investments. And we gave you some examples of what research would say is the best way to do professional learning, and that would be ongoing and embedded needs-based professional learning. We do that through our data literacy trainings, and our district math and reading coaches are examples. We also have school-wide specific investments. We have amazing reading and math interventionists in our buildings. We have building level coaches, school-specific professional learning, and we have conscious discipline for Fisher staff as an example of specific investments that are tied directly to their improvement plans. Laura?
So we also then have to turn and go back out and meet with the independent schools to really finalize what their investments are going to be. We also, and Renee's going to listen to make sure I do this part right. We also have consolidated administration. We can take money out to support the implementation of the grant. These are federal grants, so there's a lot of paper trail that follows these grants. So we are also allowed as a district to use some of that money to support administration and indirect costs. And again, I'll repeat that a percentage of the money can be used to roll over. And again, the state's provided leniency because of COVID, because there are certain usual investments that we haven't been able to do. Once we submit the grant, we wait, and the Agency of Education has to review every single investment. And Renee, I don't know if you can see, but I think we have around close to 100 investments just in our title grant. So then a programming team at the Agency of Education goes through every single one to make sure we're aligned and following the rules. And then once they've approved it, it flies over to the finance team at the agency, and they go through everything. And then our hope is always that in the summer, early in the summer, as close to July 1 as possible, we get an approval so we can start accessing the money. So that's the process for title. And now I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Kate Abbott, because she is going to provide the summary of the next big grant.
Hello. So our special education department receives our funding through what's called the IDEA B grant. This grant falls under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it includes 2 sub-grants, which is the IDEA Basic, which is the larger grant, and IDEA Pre-K Basic. So the purpose of the funding is to really assist our local schools with providing special education and related services to children that are eligible for IEPs, as well as some preventative services with a portion of the funding I'll talk about next. A portion of the IDEA grant funds are allocated to support learners whose parents have decided to enroll them in non-public or private schools. And this portion of the funding is called the proportionate share allowance. And similar to how Laura had shared, we meet with the private schools and the non-publics and discuss how they'd like their proportionate share allowance to be allocated. A portion of the IDEA grant funds may also be required to be allocated or choose to be allocated to CCEIS or CEIS services. CCEIS stands for Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services, or CEIS is Coordinated Early Intervening Services. So up to 15% of your grant funds can be used in this manner. And what the purpose is to prevent children from developing disabilities through preventative kinds of services. So it might be, speech improvement or some intervention prior to the need for an IEP. So some of the strategies in the IDEA B grant, as you can see, the grant is substantial, but we provide student transportation to school, to specialized programs like swimming. We provide physical therapy. We provide professional learning for both general and special education teachers to help meet the needs of all learners. We focus on literacy interventions, evaluation strategies. We provide assistive technology to learners, and we provide some health services, both including adaptive physical education, counseling services, speech therapy, and direct instruction, and psychological services, as well as behavioral supports for children. In the IDEA B Pre-K grant, which is much smaller, we provide just occupational therapy and some paraprofessional support for our learners identified with IEPs in the 3 to 5 age range. So how do we access the grant funding? Very similar comparatively to the title grants. IDEA B funds run from July 1 to June 30th. We haven't yet received our allocation for next year, but that usually comes out a little later in the spring or summer. Once we receive our district allocation, including whether or not we are required to invest in some CCEIS programming, and they give us our proportionate share, then we can start to develop the grant investment strategies. So we start with our proportionate share funds, and we meet with each of our nonprofit or non-public schools who have students who are eligible for an IEP service if they attended the public school, attending their site, to get some input about how that funding could be best used. So we first ask them who's interested in participating. Every school that's interested is then invited to a meeting where we gather their feedback. And then we generally, the bulk of our allocation of our IDEA B grants are based specifically on what students need for their IEPs. Sorry, I'm being paged.
I want my
Hi, Finn.
Okay. Kate, are you okay if I? Yeah, okay.
We can't open the bag of peeps. It's an emergency. But yes, that's it for me, unless there's questions on the IdeaB grant.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, so the last big grant we'll share with you is what we've shared quite a bit this year because the ESSER grant, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, which is broken out into 3 ESSERs. ESSER 1 is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, ESSER funding. ESSER 2 is the expansion of the CARES ESSER funding. And ESSER 3 is the American Rescue Plan. And even within ESSER, all 3 grants have different rules. So I'm going to turn this over to Melissa for a minute to just highlight a couple. We've met frequently about this year, but she's just going to run through each one and just share a couple of investments for each one.
Absolutely. So I just want to again bring it on home. We live in it, so we know it, but these are done in implementations and meaning that ESSER 1 expires, you can see in September of this year, and then ESSER 2 will be September of the following year. And when we scroll down, it'll be ESSER 3 will be September of the following year after that, with 20% set aside to address learning loss. So if Laura goes back up, this is an ever-going transparency for everyone to know where we're spending this money. I'll highlight a few things, but then tell you where you can go in order to see the constant updates where you don't have to wait for a board meeting, although you can have a board meeting where we can present to you. So with ESSER 1, some of the things that were description of how the funds were used, we have curriculum work and materials, we have some professional learning for teachers that included literacy, mental health, and restorative practices. It was a lot about making sure that we had healthy and safety air purifiers and filters, stipends for contracted services for contact tracing and vaccinations, and making sure that last summer we were able to fund our summer programs and also extended day and after school services, and personal protective equipment, because that's where we've been for a while now. With ESSER 2, we've moved on to adding some things like iPads and memberships because we want to incorporate technology. We're still doing sanitation supplies and facilities. Mental health services still seems to be with needs-based, again, what we need to provide for our students and our staff. We're of course looking at summer and extended day after school services and making sure that we have web conferencing and staffing for maintaining operations. With ESSER 3, some of the highlights that we'll do would be educational technology software, school HVAC systems, optimization, mental health services with staffing. Also, we're going to make sure that we address that learning loss, student and staff wellness, making sure with retention of our great teachers, summer and extended school day and after school services, and curriculum work that we'll do. I want to take one moment to say, if you go to our svsu.org website, and there's a button near the bottom called ESSER Funds and Recovery Plan. On that button, if you go in there and dive in, you'll see a little thing that says Planning and Implementation. That brings you to the recovery plan. And what we've done is the plan itself is in black text, but we've added in blue, specifically updated to show allocated services for goods and personnel. And we'll continue to update that because this is an ongoing thing to make sure everyone knows where we're spending that money.
So a little bit different than the other 2 grants. This grant came with its own set of federal guidelines, and then our state did an interpretation. So we were required to have a recovery team, which had diverse membership last spring. We were required to make a multi-year plan. We were required to have community engagement, and that plan had to be submitted to the state. And then once it was approved, the investments we have are from that plan. Along the way, the state also required us to have meaningful consultation. We were required to meet with diverse stakeholders and have community meetings. That is something we have to report to the state. They require us to list all the consultation that we've done when we're considering investments. the only part of, the only ESSER where we had to do equitable shares as a district was ESSER 1. So we had to meet with our private schools, which was great, and our partners. And now the state has taken over that piece for ESSER 2 and 3. Melissa already covered where you can find updates. And as always, you can also find on our website under the ESSER tab, the allowable uses. And the final thing we'll share is just to give you, we do receive other grants. The three major areas are the major grants. We do receive a Medicaid Administrative Claiming Grant, a MAC grant, that funds our tooth tutors, stipends for lead nurses and counselors and clinicians. It supports a lot of our social emotional activities. We did receive an ARP homeless grant. I've spoken to you already this year. We have had a huge increase in the need to support transportation for our homeless and unaccompanied youth. We would have never been able to meet all of our needs without this grant. And we have it for multiple years. I am so thankful, including materials, clothing, toiletries, anything that helps to support a child meeting their educational needs. We now have an extra pocket of money to help support that. The ARP IDEA basic and pre-K.
This component of the grant is really to help us with the recovery for some of our students with special needs. And specifically, we're looking at providing mental health supports and behavioral intervention supports over the past couple of years with this particular grant.
The alcohol and drug abuse prevention is a position at MAU Middle School. Glauca Kuzman, she's amazing. What an incredible resource for us, and holds leadership with children right on site. We were a part of the Mellon Grant, which we were a partner through Bennington College and received $60,000 over 3 years. The Child Development Division. Kate, do you want to take that one?
This one was a small pot of money really to focus on classroom improvements and facilities upgrades around COVID. Yes.
And then the last one is a Title V, which Renee and I are waiting to learn more about our state. It's been dropped into our grant system, and we're looking forward for them to share more about how we can use this pocket of money. And so now we would love to hear any questions you might have.
Leon has his hand up.
Yeah,
You ready for me?
I'm ready, Leon.
Okay. I used to be able to look at rollover, look at the amount and the end of the year or at a period and saw that monies are funds that we didn't use. So, but this time the category says what was issued plus rollover.
Correct.
So I can't tell how effective we were, even though we have the answer that because of COVID, we were allowed to allow certain things to go a certain way and funds carry over the money because we may not have had a chance to get to those funds.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to see here is that the report has everything in it that we need to know out here. And one of the things that we wanted to do is make sure that the state didn't get on us about not having got grant money and didn't spend it all or committed like it should have been. And so with COVID coming around and the things that this parent was an elementary teacher, question coming in here tonight is a comparison that sort of got things out there for me to say, okay, if learning may not be achieved to the level of their expectation, in this report, we have everything here to say what we can do and what we need to be doing to help catch those students and catch them up.
Correct.
So the answer to the elementary school will be easy for them to answer that. But I just wanted, I just couldn't tell how effective we were. And I know we got an answer. I just wanted to bring that out because in previous years, we didn't have the title saying that the money was grant and rollover included. And I was able to say how effective we were. So that was just a comment. I don't know whether you want to say anything or just move on.
Can I ask Leon, can I ask a clarifying question? Actually, let me put that, that's why, hold on, let me just put that back up again, just so I can. So Leon, if you're just talking about title money, okay? Because every grant has the same. So for title money, what you're seeing in this top chart is
Right.
what our initial allocation was when our rollover. And then this bottom green chart says we've written investments. So this is the hard part. So we've written investments toward all that. So that's the same what's left that we could, knowing that we do need to keep some money. We have a lot of staff in title, and we have to have enough to make sure that we're going to be okay moving forward, so that we have all of, we keep the resources that we have. But we are trying to be very transparent tonight. This is a cut and paste right from the system. So this is exactly what we have. So does that help, Leon?
Yeah, that helps, and it helps to be able to answer. I mean, for those individuals that have questions about not being on up to snuff to where parents are, and it's the perception I'm trying to get at. Parents are saying they really have a feeling that their kids didn't get, because of COVID, what they should have been getting. And so now you've laid out this program which says we got the things in place to be able to do that, and you'll be able to tell them and show them that you can really make a quick move to bring them back the way we think they need to be based on this program here.
Yeah. Well, Leon, I think the other thing that ESSER 3 did that was, I think, because they were building the rules as they were going. And with ESSER 3, they even got more specific around addressing learning loss. That, yes, we understand that we understand that facilities are super important. Please continue also using this money to address learning loss. And they made it, it's something that's really clear that we have to do.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you.
Addressing Arlington Sandgate update. School calendar continues to be an issue, but so I want to report that this week at our twice monthly meeting with principals and directors, we have this mechanism we use called problem of practice. That's, we put a problem out to the whole group and we make a presentation, and the calendar was the problem of practice this week. And Laura and I made a presentation to all the principals, which included the Arlington principals, who have been coming to our director and principals meeting since December now. And all our directors there give a presentation, then they get to ask qualifying questions, give us feedback, and then we take it back as we try to find a little bit more compromise on this calendar. I did reach out to the Arlington Education Association. We have yet to set a meeting date, but I was hoping it's going to happen this week, but tomorrow being Thursday, it might be more that it's next week that we meet to continue to look for areas where we can reach more compromise on that calendar. And then I believe that finance, HR, including fund, as the presentation you saw tonight, those operations have been integrated. There's always more, there'll be little things that we miss and we'll adjust accordingly. I believe full integration is close, particularly for student support services, which again, special education, but I try not to use that term. Student support services, professional learning, school safety. What's next up that we need to start looking at is collective bargaining, because that's going to be the next thing that's going to come up. And I've heard it said that the goal is one contract. I'm not necessarily sure that is the goal. There are supervisory unions that operate with multiple contracts and find ways to do it. But what we're working on is a read down of both contracts to look for similarities in them and see if that is even achievable. Next up is collective bargaining, and as I just said, and I want to go back to some things that I think that still need work is out of district student policy, addressing, and codifying how that is going to happen. I think school board meeting coordination is now fully under the SU. So I'm confident that that is working. Again, there's always a little snags here. We experienced one tonight, but I'm committed to making sure that is always a work in progress. Grants management is, as you heard from Laura and Renee and all that, I'm confident that has been transitioned. And business management, human resources, but as we wrap up towards the end of this year, it's what's the higher hanging fruit, if you will, that we haven't addressed. Some of the things that I'm still concerned, like we have two different local standard boards, not too sure about the integration of our Medicare billing, where we are on that. Technology, one of the conversations that I've had with Adam is, bringing that into being more one system. I don't think we're there yet. But I don't think we're everywhere where we want to be, but I think that I think it's gone pretty good, and we have Bill for not much more time. I don't know if Bill is still here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. And I don't know, Bill, if you have anything you want to add on what you think we still may need to accomplish for this integration. Not to put you on the spot, but on board members too, I would love input, particularly from our Arlington board members, if there's things that you think that we still need to address. The more eyes that I have on this, the more confidence that I will have that we're going to have as smooth an operation as possible.
I'll take the political high road and just say that none of us really wanted this, but in the absence of probably leadership at the state, I think everyone's done a wonderful job, and I'm confident with the SVSU coming in that will make headway. And I am here for a few more months, so we'll make sure Arlington and the SVSU is all set.
Again, I'll say to the board members present, I would love, if there are items that you would like to email me about, or if you want to meet, I would welcome the input that, because and Bill, this goes to you too, your system better than we ever will. And, it's similar to what I said about, technology. SUSE technology came in with an outside view of what was going on here. They've integrated with the people, Elaine and Chip and others that have given them a different view from what you look like. So I would welcome whatever assistance you could offer me, because I'd rather that than, July 1 comes around and Bill is on to new endeavors, and I get a phone call that I didn't see coming. So appreciate that. Any questions before I go, or any comments before?
I would just say, fundamentally our responsibility is to make sure that our schools, the Arlington schools, have the support they need. We've benefited from being a single operating school district SU for a very long time. There's some benefits that come with that. The transition to a larger SU will also have some opportunities as long as our schools are getting what they need. I'm sure we can overcome any other obstacles. So our responsibility, I think collectively, will be to make sure that we get feedback from our principals. Where are there stumbling blocks? Where are there roadblocks? Where are the needs not being met? And then that's what we will be able to come back with on.
I think as long as we always pledge to continue to communicate and have this conversation.
Yeah. As long as the lines of communication are open, we can solve the problems. That's
as Bill said, maybe none of us wanted this, but I think we're all committed to making sure that it works, because I don't know what our option is if it
I don't
isn't.
think there is any other.
Yeah,
So
right.
we have to make this work, and I think you've learned probably from me. I'm certainly not afraid to throw out an email like that.
And I mean it when I say welcome. I can't adjust if I'm not hearing what the issues are, so.
On this plan, though, we had talked about, this was kind of Bill's initial memo
Yeah.
that turned into a plan. I don't know, we haven't really formally updated it. I don't know what kind of formal documentation. I just don't want to end up on June 15th and we've got this glaring omission
No.
that we didn't think about.
Yeah.
So
And I don't think that memo included everything, but what we could,
yes,
I
we
could
still don't
recon-
have a document that covers everything.
Right.
Um,
I don't know if that was ever the intent to do that. This was really like an internal document that came from an administrator's meeting of like a brainstorming session of just throwing items down on a paper of what it was that then I shared with you, but
But I
be
have
happy.
asked a couple of times
Yeah.
for a more formal document with
Right.
milestones and key dates and points of contact. So I don't want to end up at a point that we're like, well, we didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So,
I think to Nicole's point, if we don't have that document, we can't measure success and be sure that we were 100% successful or efficient in the transition.
Well, I have no other document other than what's here. So what this document is, I'd be happy to bring that team back together and update it and present it to you at next month's meeting. But as far as generating, a complete transition, I think part of that is the thought process that we all might differ on here is like, I don't have a transition plan I didn't have a transition plan when the Union Elementary School all merged, right? We did not, the duties just came to us, right? That when Bennington Elementary merged and Pownell and Shaftesbury and Woodford all became one, it was an absorption. So there are, I hear what you're saying. I'll take this document and we can update it. It's never going to have
it's not
every
gonna-
task
absolutely.
that,
But if
that
the
we
key
think.
stakeholders have
Yeah.
an input into it, if Renee and Laura and Kate and Sarah and
Yeah.
Deanne, if those key and Nick
And we have,
can look at this and say,
and that is who has met twice on this.
right,
And we had brainstorming sessions to build this from the first draft that Bill gave us back in, I think, November.
And maybe we've already successfully completed some of these tasks.
Yeah.
They can be
Yeah.
checked off
Taken off.
and removed.
I think many have, as I said to you earlier, so. Okay, so I will put that again on the agenda for next meeting but we'll focus on updating revision of what we presented to you back, I think, in January, right?
Yep.
January 11th or something like that. The only thing I wanted to talk to you about is, I don't know if you heard about the PCB testing that is coming. Very concerned about that. The email we received from the state this week has put two of our schools in the first quarter of testing, Arlington High School and Mount Anthony Union High School, and they have a matrix of why those schools got selected first, what age bracket they're in, is there future construction being planned for them, and is ventilation part of that program. So the problem statewide with this is there's money for testing, but there's no money for remediation.
right.
And very concerned, hopefully they won't find anything, but we know that this is what happened up in Burlington. And they were scrambling to find another place to hold classes because of what was discovered in that building. I hope we're not going to reach anything like that. But I know the Superintendent's Association, I believe the School Board Association is doing the same thing, asked to contact our senators and representatives, urging them to do the second part of what they voted. They voted for the testing, create a fund, because the environmental, the Department of Environmental Conservation estimates that PCB cleanup costs for schools at $41 million or more. So Yeah, I'm guessing that that is their best estimate, because if you haven't tested, how do you know? Or, you know, but if that tier could be devastating to our budgets, we have nothing budgeted for this remediation. And we have no plans for what would be alternative sites, or that those sites for them would test. So first 2 schools up will be that. All schools, what my understanding is all schools will be part of the inventory. Again, let me make sure I use the right term. To conduct inventories of school buildings throughout the SU. If two schools are up, they're most likely going to do an inventory assessment of all the buildings at the same time. But the testing for PCBs will be rotated by so many per quarter to not overwhelm any SU or the tester. So we'll keep you updated on that, but we've been contacted that those 2 schools are up for May and June. Somewhere during that time, they're going to be tested. And it's like a 12-week process, we're told. And, you know, so I do not have a date of when they're going to be in those schools and when the testing is going to happen. But I, you know, urge you, if you feel comfortable doing that, to reach out to your senators and representatives and ask that, you know, there needs to be funding for remediation. They need, you know, to mandate testing and then not mandate a resolution for if something is found is not a solution at all. So that's last day of school, slated to be June 10th, unless we have another hailstorm on top of Woodford. But that's anything else I can answer for any board member this evening.
Other questions for Jim? You all set, Jim?
Yes, thank you.
I really like the 5:30 meeting time, and I think we heard last meeting that it was difficult for people to get out of work, those that get out at 5 and still get connected to a meeting. So I'm sort of hoping that can move to 5:30, and later when we get to the new digs, I guess we're talking about moving it even later, right? So we're talking,
yeah, it's, you know,
6 or something.
Yeah, I would love that we never go back to the 7 o'clock that we used to meet, and I think our administrators who have already put in a long day and then come for that, I think, but I realize that 5 o'clock may be too early, you know, so 5:30 or 6 o'clock, even if you want to go to 6, once we're established in a new location, I'm fine with that. And it's always the wish of the board anyways.
Well, if we could work at 5:30, that allows people to get out of work.
So we will, Richard, let the minutes show that May and June's meeting will be at 5:30, so that we have no confusion.
Thank you. Superintendent's evaluation is really going to be led by Jackie, who's not here this week. And as soon as she gets back from her vacation in a couple of days, I think, she'll be contacting the members of that evaluation committee. Nicole cued me in to spend a little more attention on the legislative reports, the SBA thing. And I did see some dates in some of that reading, which I'll try to keep up on a monthly basis. So you have some information here if you don't read it directly. But they did talk about Mount Anthony and Arlington for April of 24. Now, I don't know if that's still a date that's going to hold, and then North Bennington, July of 24. So if that's
let me go back to the email.
That was in the VSBA report, so I'm not sure if that's
Is Renee still here? Renee, I forwarded the email. Do you have the exact date of when those 2 schools will be done? Maybe it's not maybe it's not May of June of this year.
Yeah, I'm here, and I'm actually was just sorting it because I think a couple of our schools might actually be missing.
Yeah. Which we have to report by the 29th if schools are missing.
So we only have 3 schools identified right now on the list, and Arlington, is Arlington Memorial High School is slated for April 1st through June 30th of 24. Fisher is October 1 through December 31st of 22. And Mount Anthony High School is April 1st through June 30th of 24.
Okay.
So all the other schools are missing. So I'll draft that email to let them know.
So whenever I wasn't sure, are they missing or they just have not been given a date yet?
At the end of the email, it says, please email them if your school is not on the list, but was constructed before 1980.
80,
So
yep.
the middle school is the only one that will not be on the list.
I was gonna say, isn't that 99% of all the schools?
I would say, yeah.
Thanks, Renee. There's an equity initiative workshop on May 3rd from 4:30 to 5:30. The VSBA website has a check-in and a registration for that. Also legislative issues that are being talked about, and there's only a couple of weeks left in the legislative session, I think. Early childhood governance. I guess that's on the table. School meals and funding weighting is also going to be part of their discussion before they adjourn. I'll be attending school board chair training May 2nd, 9th, and 16th as a requirement by law. And that's, oh, there is one other small item. We got a letter concerning automated calling from the SVSU. I'm not sure exactly how this works, but it sounds like there's an automated call that goes that asks the receiver to check on the website, and this happens sometimes during working hours. And there are some folks that get a little cranky about that because they have to answer what they think is probably an emergency call that is just general information. I'm not sure exactly if I'm representing this correctly, but there's some concern that some of these automated calls don't need to be happening during work hours. I don't know how you change that or address that, but it was a concern brought to me. So
I can have a discussion on that. And there's multiple ways automatic calls can be. Principals can do it individually at their own schools. Then there are SU calls. We often make calls that refer for further information, go to our website because it's limited to what we can say in a message time. I can look into it further. We try to be consistent on a time that we usually give. It's not till like after, we don't do messages until after 3:30 until, so that there isn't confusion within the school when calls go out. But I'll take that suggestion into consideration that what would go to a more standard, at 6 o'clock. Is that, I don't know what they would prefer.
there's no indication about what the best thing is. It's just that
And I would assume if it's an emergency, you spell out the emergency.
Right, yeah.
And everything else can
Yeah.
likely just be held until someone has the convenience of looking on the website.
I'm not entirely happy with our automatic calling because one of the challenges we have is people's inboard message, so that when we go and if they're leaving a long message on theirs, then they're not hearing our message. So then one of the tactics that we use is there's a pause that's saying the following is a message from the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union, and it's repeated multiple times so that the message comes later in our message, so that any message that like, hi, you've reached Jim Kilkeen, I can't come to the phone right now, so that we're not talking over that. That's why there's that delay. But it is something that I've discussed with Adam about, is there another system that will work better for us? And it brings up a good point, and I will meet with our public information coordinator, and maybe we should standardize when messages go out that are of a non-emergency nature. Like, we pick a time that messages go out at 6 o'clock, and you don't do it earlier, you don't do it later. unless it's a no school announcement, but then, but I think, it's a point out there, but what, somebody's, then we'll hear, I don't want to be disturbed during supper time, so we're never gonna please everyone, but I think it's worth looking at.
Thank you. That's the end of my report. Are there any other issues to be brought before the board? There's no binding action we could take, but it may affect future agendas.
And this just kind of hit me as we just got off the calendar again. And I know that this year we're calling snowy separately. We're also 2 separate calendars this year.
Right.
Next year, when we're the same calendar, what are your thoughts on that? Because geographically, we are
Geographically
different.
very different. So as I did for this year, I'd say that I will meet with the principals again and see what works best for them. It's not a new problem. I struggle many times with like what's happening in Woodford or Shaftesbury Hollow versus what's happening in Bennington. So I'm not locked into one particular. If it works best that we call 2 different things, that I'm not opposed to that, and that just would mean, even though we have one calendar, it would mean that somebody gets out late than us, which has happened before because of like when I've had to cancel school for one school because they had power failure or something like that. So we've had times where they've had to go a day later than everybody else. Lossy comes an issue, but not, that's why, as long as we're running separate buses, I don't think it's an issue. Where it would really become an issue is we had one transportation system, one bus contract. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen it. I mean, my phone starts ringing at 4:30 in the morning and cars are off the road, and I get up and walk out, and there's not a drop of snow in Arlington, but Pownell and Woodford and Searsburg and some of Bennington has been absolutely pounded on. And vice versa. I mean, I've walked out of my house and seen a foot of snow, and I drive to Bennington and there's nothing.
As long as there's 2 transportation systems, I really don't think it's an issue. But I have to make the call, like for all of the other towns as one, because we only contract to run those buses 180 days. And if I ran it for 4 towns 180 days, then the other ones wouldn't have transportation without additional charge.
Other?
We need the executive session.
Well,
Okay.
and for your information, the SBSU budget status report was in the packet, and student enrollment for 2022 is included. Next item is we have an executive session under 1 VSA 313(3) for the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. And we'll have another executive session following that for under 1 VSA 313(a).
Yeah, I would suggest we just stay in rather than come in and come out. And I am going to ask that you allow in for first part Renee Gordon. Nick, you here? Nick Gall. Or can you stay for the work? Yeah.
I'm here. Yep.
Yeah. Right. We don't need anyone else for that, right? Nick.
I don't believe so. No.
Renee and Laura. And then some of them will be leaving for the second part, but I think we could start with all that. I think you have to vote to allow us, and myself to allow us to attend.
So we need a motion to go into executive session.
And Bill should come into the first part too.
To include those folks that Jim was talking about.
So moved.
I'll make a motion on executive session and invite.
I'll second that. I say we're gonna, action is required when we come back out.
Yes, it may be required. Yes.
I'll finish that motion.
Now, do we have a motion and a second?
Yep.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I think you're all here.
Okay, Dick.
We return to open session at 7:59 PM. We have a motion. Leon,
Yes, we have some action that we need to take. I make a motion that we we provide a 3% increase to all the non-union SVSU employees.
we have a motion. Is there a second? Second from Scott. Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? No abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, Leon. We have no other business. Our agenda is exhausted. So,
So am I.
And we are exhausted.
I make a motion to adjourn.
thank you. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Thank you all.
In favor. Thank you.
Cat TV is celebrating 30 years of community media. Help support Cat TV's next 30 years by becoming a member today. Your membership will help us continue covering meaningful, local content. Thank you for supporting your local community media station.